Hi there. So in this video, we're going to do our last Monopoly practice problem, and it's the rest of the AP exam problem that we looked at once already, where we determined profit maximizing quantity and price, and then we determined revenue maximizing quantity and price. So this is the same question that students saw about 15 years ago. So the first part says they show the demand and cost curves of a firm that does not price discriminate, and now we actually know what that means. And I'm going to kind of just run through these actually, and then scoot back up to show what these are. So I'm going to actually zoom out just a shade, so that we don't have to constantly switch back and forth quite so much. And again, I know that if you can't quite read that, I'm going to zoom in at the end and show you the solutions as well. Suppose the government regulates the firm's price to produce the allocatively efficient. So when I read that, the very first thing I think is optimal, the socially optimal, where price equals marginal cost. So that's my first thing that I think is like, what is that supposed to mean? Allocative efficient, that means optimal, that means price equals marginal cost, or it means where the supply and demand curves intercept. Now, marginal cost here, that's kind of like our supply curve. The demand curve here tells us what the price that people are willing to pay is. So I'm going to look and see, well, where does marginal cost and demand or supply equal each other? That happens at point G. And that price is P1, and that quantity is Q4. So we're going to say P1, Q4. And I'm going to rewrite that here in just a moment. And then it says, suppose the firm produces at that level of output, the socially efficient or allocatively efficient level of output, will they be earning a profit or a loss? Well, if I use this point and I say we're going to produce here, and we're at P sub 1, I need to compare the average cost curve at P sub 1, and I find that it's actually above it. That point E, where the average cost curve is above what that P sub 1 price is. And because P sub 1, right, because P sub 1 is less than ATC, therefore they're earning a loss, is what I can say there. Now, using the labeling on the graph, identify the area of that loss at that efficient level of output. Well, that's going to be down all along P2, and P2 kind of corresponds to this E point. And it's this little kind of long, skinny rectangle that I'm going to kind of shade in right here. So that's the amount of loss. And again, that would be if we regulated this firm to the P1 level of prices. So I'm going to zoom back in just so you can kind of see that a little bit clearer. And again, it's basically going up from the price that we're charging up to the ATC and over. And so the area of that loss, right, if we're kind of saying using the labeling on the graph, identify the area of the loss, would be P2 to P1, G to E. So we're going to rewrite that, P2 to P1, E to G. And then the last part, using the labeling, identify the area of consumer surplus at that level of output. And we're going to kind of take that off here. We'll zoom back out. And the area of consumer surplus, well, if I'm charging P1, right, that's the price that they're actually paying, then I go from price they're paying over to the quantity that we're producing, which is Q4, all the way up the demand curve. So this huge triangle is going to be actually equal to it. And it's all of this area that goes all the way up that demand curve. And again, that's because we're paying, what the price they're paying is P1. Right? So the price they're paying is down here. Now, sometimes students feel really uncomfortable with the notion that the loss that the company's earning is overlapping with the consumer surplus. That's fine. That happens, right? That's okay. When companies are losing money, that will often be the case because they're really not the same concept. Consumer surplus refers to the benefits that you're gaining from a transaction, what you're willing to pay versus what you did pay. Whereas the economic loss that the firm is incurring is kind of money that they're actually losing as they're operating. So our last part here, identifying the area of that, is P7 to P1 all the way to point G. So that's going to be our last one, P7, P1, point G. And then the very last question here, using they want to do a price that allows the firm to cover all of its opportunity costs. That's another way of saying where the price equals the ATC, where they are breaking even. Right, where the firm, let me move that just a little bit, where the firm is breaking even. So if they're covering all their opportunity costs, that means they're covering their implicit costs, which says they're breaking even. Using the labeling, identify the price. So we're looking for a price that they would set where price equals ATC. So I'm going to come back up here. Average total cost equals the demand curve at point D. So I'm going to come over and notice that that price is P3. So the last one here, P3. So question here, P1, Q4, loss, P2, P1, EG, P7, P1G, and then P3. So this is an AP exam problem. Hopefully this helped you practice a little bit with Monopoly. I'll see you next time.